where they had some guests, one from Sweden, one from Denmark, and one from Norway. And then they presented them with some recording in Old Norse and trying to see how much they could pick up. But that was very anecdotal, and also the quality of the recording wasn't great. And it is also possible, which is something that they do a lot on that channel, that they specifically selected the one sentence that they knew that they could understand because of similarities. But he is the one to ask when it comes to this, so let's check it out. As always, you'll find a link in the description and a pinned comment to check out original video. We won't be reacting to the whole thing.
Hi, I'm Old Norse specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. Could a Viking learn to understand or speak modern Norwegian? What would the challenges be? Well, we're going to have some starting point for a Viking, right? So what I'm going to use is not someone from just any place or time, but someone from the relatively late Viking age in Iceland or Western Norway. That's the language that we know the best from the early medieval period, because that's the language that's reflected in our Skaldic and Eddic poetry preserved in Iceland. Those are poems like those in the Poetic Edda that talk about the Norse
saga,
gods, or poems in the Skaldic tradition that praise Norwegian kings. And for Norwegian, I'm talking about that specifically because that's going to be closer than Swedish or Danish to that language. But we're going to find that the kind of Norwegian...
Let me read what he's saying here. Icelandic versus Old Norse is its own question, which I've gone over in some detail in this video. Ooh, Old Norse versus modern Icelandic, a demonstration. We're going to react to that one afterwards. Today we're looking at this one with Norwegian. But then I would be even more interested when it comes to the Icelandic, modern Icelandic versus Old Norse, how similar and how different they are.
That a Viking could understand best would probably be pretty old-fashioned landsmål, so the oldest kind of Norse, something that I've talked about a little bit on this video, Norse as opposed to Bokmål Norwegian. So let's get into some of these differences that the Viking would encounter pretty fast.
Cool. If you're into Old Norse, you should totally subscribe to him, a wealth of knowledge.
One of the most noticeable changes is the loss of the th sound, the sound that English spells as th. So this is spelled with a special letter thorn in Old Norse, and that letter in our classical form of Old Norse, the form that we teach in textbooks, is only used at the beginning of words.
Okay.
He would have to learn that that becomes t just about everywhere. So for example, thola, to endure, becomes tula, to endure. Again, I'm going to use kind of an older fashioned Norse as my basis for Norwegian here. It's not going to be very much like an Oslo speaker, which is what most people think of when they think of Norwegian. Or for the number 3, where an Old Norse speaker says thrir. The closest thing he's going to get is an old-fashioned landsmål tri. Actually, most modern Norwegians say tre with a lowered vowel. That vowel lowering is something else he'd have to get used to. It's a little bit sporadic in Norwegian.
Feels a little bit like the vowel lowering that happens between Italian and Sicilian, for instance. That would be interesting. Because in Sicilian we say tri, ce n'è tri, instead of tre, modern Italian.
Much more common elsewhere in Swedish and Danish.
Yeah.
That th would become a d, however, not a t, in a lot of low-stress common words. So, for example, you, talking to one person, is no longer thu, right? Fairly clearly related to English thou, but do. And we also see that that old oo has moved forward in the mouth. You'd have to get used to that pronunciation, which it's hard to say if a Norse speaker would have consider that either.
I love that with him, of course it is, but with him it's like from the perspective of an Old Norse, like what we would imagine a Viking to be. How much would he understand of modern Norwegian? I love that he looks at it the other way around. Of course he does. Love it.
A U or a Y, it's kind of between the two. There's also ed, which is the other th sound from an English perspective. So
the vocalized one in father.
Thorn is the one written with the letter that looks like a P with a branch above it, is the th in thin. Ed, which looks like a medieval D with a slash through it. Some people it looks like an O with an X above it, is the th sound in then. The difference is thin, your vocal cords aren't vibrating, then your vocal cords are. Well, that eth has actually gone silent in Norwegian. It is sometimes still spelled, but it is no longer pronounced. So, for example, in a word like time, Old Norse tid, that's modern Norwegian t. Now, because
This is fascinating from an Old Norse perspective. I'm going to keep saying Viking for ease of use. Of course, imagine that as meaning an Old Norse, Old Norse the language, but I'm talking about like a Norse person. Even though I say Viking, I'm going to use it interchangeably. So for them, it would feel like modern Norwegian is missing something. And I think classical Latin is similar, or Latin in general, when compared to Italian, for instance. Probably for them, our language today is missing a lot of pieces, right? Museum, or all the words that have at the end, like imperium, romanum. For us, impero, romano. It probably sounds like we are cutting a lot of stuff out.
because some spellings in modern Norwegian and the other continental Scandinavian languages today are historically informed, some of those old eths are still spelled as t's, because what happened is that between Old Norse and modern Norwegian, a t went to eth, went to silent, but they were close enough to a time when they still wrote these as t's that the spelling with t has been brought back. A good example of this is the word the when used with neuter nouns. So for example, the ship, Old Norse skipet, modern Norwegian skipe. Now, several things have happened there, but let's talk about the T first. That T at the end first actually went to eth. So first you'd have something like skipið, which is modern Icelandic. It's how they still say it there, the kind of middle stage. Then the eth would go silent.
So Icelandic is more conservative. Makes sense, of course, because a lot of island languages tend to be more conservative. Of course, this depends on various historical events, but in Italy is similar. Sardinian and Sicilian, Sardinian being the most conservative when it comes to any connection to Latin, but then Sicilian is also quite conservative, and definitely more conservative than Italian, in my opinion, at least, when it comes to word order. And the Sicilian has a lot of admixtures from other languages as well, so there is that we need to consider. But islands make sense.